The F1 season is about to start, and the preseason testing in Bahrain gave us the first glimpse of the real cars that will race this year. Unlike the liveries that were revealed earlier, these cars showed us the actual innovations and changes that the teams have made over the winter. I will explore some of the most interesting and surprising features of the new cars, and also give you a vibe check of how the teams are performing and feeling ahead of the first race. Let's dive in. Preseason testing is not a competition, but a validation. Before the 3-day test, each team can only run their car for 100 kilometers, which is usually done as a filming day to get some footage for the sponsors, and to make sure the car doesn't fall apart on the track. The real test comes in Bahrain, where the teams can run their cars for longer periods, with different setups, tires, and fuel loads. They also use special devices like aero rakes and flow paint to measure and visualize the airflow around the car and compare it with the data from the wind tunnel and the simulations. The goal is to collect as much information as possible and to identify and fix any issues or problems that might arise. One of the most intriguing cars in the test was the Red Bull RB20. The reigning champions surprised everyone with their bold and aggressive design, which had some similarities with last year's Mercedes, especially in the engine cover and the side pod area. These are crucial parts of the car as they affect the cooling, the packaging, and the aerodynamics. In the current generation of cars, the ground effect floors generate 60 to 80% of the downforce, but the side pods also play a big role, and any change can have a significant impact. Red Bull dominated in 2023, and many expected them to stick with their winning formula, but instead they decided to go for a radical overhaul, while the rest of the grid tried to copy their RB19. The question is, will it pay off, or will it backfire? And how will Mercedes respond to their challenge, given their own difficulties with a similar concept? One of the most noticeable features of the Red Bull RB20 is the side pod design, which has been completely revamped from last year. Ted Kravitz, the F1 reporter, explained how Red Bull have managed to cool their car with such a sleek and narrow shape. He said, "There is the vertical side pod entry, but actually there's a hidden side pod air intake just around the O of Oracle, just north upstream of it, on the side pod." Ted is talking about the driver's left of the car here. It's around the E on the driver's right. Do you remember last year they had the underbite, effectively, for the side pod entry, so the hole was above and then it went down into the side pod? Well, they flipped that. They've reversed that. They've turned it on its head. It's an overbite now. The top of the side pod sticks out, and then the underneath is where they're taking in air for the radiator to cool. This is a bold and risky move by Red Bull, as it could compromise the aerodynamics and the stability of the car. Kravitz described it as a big question mark and wondered if it would work as intended. He said, "No doubt, radiator technology has come on, and Red Bull has taken advantage of that. They don't need such big side pod entries to cool the car. But this is just one of the main things that they've changed. That is the big question mark. Is it going to work?" The answer, at least from the first day of testing, seemed to be a resounding yes. Max Verstappen was behind the wheel of the RB20 for the whole day, and he looked very comfortable and confident. He started his running on the C2 tire, one of the harder compounds this year, and he struggled to find grip on the dusty track. He slid around a lot for the first half hour, but after switching to the C3, the vibes were very good. The car looked stable, smooth, and fast. Verstappen didn't have to fight the steering wheel or make many adjustments. He was just driving with ease. It wasn't just in the corners that the car looked good either. On the straights, it looked super smooth as well, with Julian Palmer in the commentary saying it looked like it had active ride suspension. Of course, it doesn't have active ride suspension, as it isn't legal in F1, but it looked like it. Bahrain is a very bumpy track, and if you've seen endurance racing there, the cars bounce all over the place. But the Red Bull looked like it was driving on the most perfectly flat surface you could imagine. Helmut Marko, the Red Bull advisor, revealed that the team's plan is to continue reducing the size of their side pods throughout the season, but there are still questions over whether the new design philosophy works. Marko has hinted that Red Bull's engineers are working on a more extreme solution, similar to the zero-pod concept introduced by Mercedes at the start of their 2022 campaign, with an implementation scheduled for the Japanese Grand Prix in early April. He said they, Mercedes, were also convinced by the data of their side podless concept, but in practice it didn't work at all. We'll now see in the tests whether we can successfully implement this solution or, let's say, a similar solution. Adrian Newey always favored cars without radiators, but of course the engine people can't do that. That's logical. Those side pods will definitely be something to keep an eye on as the season continues. The Red Bull RB20 is a fascinating and innovative car, and it seems to have the potential to challenge Mercedes for the title this year. But it is still early days, and anything can happen in F1. The preseason testing is just the beginning, and the real test will come in the first race. Will Red Bull's gamble pay off, or will Mercedes bounce back? We'll have to wait and see. Another team that has caught the eye of Adrian Newey is Mercedes, who have introduced a new front wing for 2024. This wing features a thin carbon fiber cable on the top element that connects the nose to the outer wing element. This is a clever way of creating more downforce and reducing drag, but it also raised some doubts about its legality. However, the FIA have inspected the wing and given it the green light, so Mercedes can use it without any worries. Ted Kravitz, the F1 reporter, praised the innovation and credited John Owen, the designer, for coming up with it. He said, "It's a genius move, so credit to John Owen, the designer here, who has come up with that bit of magic on the front wing." Adrian Newey had hinted at the Red Bull launch that there was something interesting on the Mercedes car, but he didn't specify what. Now we know that it was the front wing that he was talking about. The vibes from the Mercedes team on day one were not very positive, though. George Russell had a slow and frustrating start to the day. He spent most of the morning session in the garage watching his team work on the car. That is a bad sign for the Silver Arrows, as it means they had some serious issues with the car and they lost valuable time and data. The team also put up a screen over the entrance to their garage, which usually means they are hiding something from the other teams. When Russell finally got on track, the car looked bouncy and unstable, especially on the pit straight. That is not what the fans of the team wanted to see. Lewis Hamilton, who will take over the car on day 2, will hope that the team can fix whatever the problem was and give him a better chance to test the car. The last of the classic Big 3 teams, Ferrari, had a decent start to the day. The vibes from the team were good, and the car looked fast and reliable. However, there was one thing that stood out. The car was bouncing a lot on the straights, where the Red Bull was gliding smoothly. This could be a sign of a wrong ride height setting, or something more serious. Ferrari will have to work on that and make sure they don't lose any performance or damage the car. The two teams that challenged the Big 3 last year, McLaren and Aston Martin, had a smooth and productive day in Bahrain. The vibes from both teams were good, and the cars looked competitive and consistent. They both completed a lot of laps and ran their testing plan without any major issues. This is a good sign for a strong start to the season, and they will hope to keep up the momentum. The bottom 5 teams from last year, Sauber, AlphaTauri, Williams, Haas, and Alfa Romeo, had a mixed day. Sauber had a new livery, which was very bright and eye-catching, but not in a good way. The neon green and black combination was very ugly and offensive, and many fans hoped that they would be at the back of the grid so they wouldn't have to see them. However, the car looked decent and stable on track, and they might surprise some people this year. AlphaTauri, the Red Bull sister team, also had a new livery, which was much better and more elegant. The car looked good as well, and Yuki Tsunoda was happy with his first run. He said, "First run with the car 0-1, feeling great on the track." Williams also looked good on track, and they will hope to improve their position this year. However, it is hard to tell if any of these 4 teams will make a significant move up the grid, as the competition is very tight and any small advantage can make a big difference. The last team, Haas, had a very disappointing day. Their new team principal, Katsu, had already admitted that they expected to be at the back of the grid, as they had focused their winter development on solving their tire degradation problem, which had ruined their season last year. However, judging from their performance on day 1, there was no sign of improvement. The car looked slow and unreliable, and they had the fewest laps of any team. They will have to work very hard to catch up with the rest of the grid, or they will be left behind. Who impressed you the most, and who disappointed you the most? Let me know your opinions and predictions for the season in the comments below.